Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to part 2 of today's session. I'm just going to continue on where I left off in the first part of today's reading. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Even as he sat on the journey to Iraq, he would find at every stop an advisor or a detractor that would try to divert him away from his path. At every stop, Imam Hussain would receive news of treachery from Iraq. When news of the murder of Muslim ibn Aqil and Hani ibn Urwa came, some of his companions attempted to dissuade him from his journey. He refused. So if you remember a couple of parts ago, Muslim ibn Aqil was the cousin of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, who went ahead of him to Kufa to check to see if the Kufans were true to their word, as they had written hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of letters to Imam Hussain, stating their solidarity and support to him and his revolution. So he sent Muslim ibn Aqil ahead of him to Kufa to see if the Kufans were real in what they were saying and would continue to support Imam Hussain alayhi salam. When he got there though, of course, he was martyred. He was the first martyr of Hussein's revolution. Of course, martyred by Yazid's men, because Yazid had sent some of his thugs to Kufa to hunt down anyone who had shown any kind of solidarity or support to Imam Hussain. And Hani ibn Urwa was a dedicated follower of the Alids being Imam Ali and his sons. When Muslim ibn Aqil arrived in Kufa, Hani ibn Urwa opened his doors and welcomed him as a guest. Hani was captured and executed alongside Muslim. So they were both two supporters of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And I shouldn't say they were the first martyrs, to be honest, because many Kufans were also executed just for stating their support and solidarity to Imam Hussain and his revolution. When similar news arrived, he gathered his men and whoever followed his caravan to deliver the solemn news. Imam Hussain said, "I have received tragic news. Muslim ibn Aqil, Hani ibn Urwa, and Abdullah ibn Yaqtur were all murdered." Okay, Abdullah ibn Yaqtur was Imam Hussein's foster brother. He was another of Imam Hussein's emissaries to Kufa. He was captured by Ubaydillah ibn Ziyad and was executed after being thrown off the roof of the palace. Imam Hussain continues, "We have been abandoned by our followers." And this is why many people say that it was the Shia that killed Imam Hussain, which is kind of ridiculous, because really, did they draw the sword and slit his throat? Did they draw the sword? Did they shoot the arrows against him? No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They just failed to support him. Yazid was still gonna try and kill him, no matter how many supporters he had. But they failed to support him out of fear of their own lives. Imam Hussain alayhi salam continues, "Whoever of you wishes to leave now will not be blamed. People began to leave left and right. At the end, only those few who had come with him from Medina remained. He did this because he feared that those who had followed his caravan thought that he was headed to a land where he will become the certain ruler. He hated that they would follow him without knowing what they were truly headed to. He knew that if he delivered to them this news, only those who were most loyal and wished to die alongside him to sacrifice their lives for him would remain. When some again attempted to convince him to turn back and return home, Hussain replied, 'Servant of Allah, I know that you give a prudent opinion, but Allah's will cannot be undone.' All these warnings are clear in their indication that Imam Hussain knew exactly the fate that he had to face. Therefore, we cannot search for reasons and consequences in the folds of political power. His revolution was not meant to achieve a direct and immediate political victory. Imam Hussain knew that this was impossible. It may seem very strange to us that Imam Hussain would lead such a revolution that is doomed for failure. Why would a man, by his own will and reason, take his family and closest companions to their deaths? Why would he fight a losing battle? Why would he so easily present himself to his enemies? All of these are questions that must be answered. I believe that the Muslim nation at that time needed to witness such a tragic sacrifice. The event fueled the fires of revolution and reform in the nation. Imam Hussein's actions would be the quintessence of altruism and sacrifice for the sake of principle. By that, he became a beacon for revolutionaries despite the treacherous path that they had to take. The chieftains and the masses at the time were united in their apathy. They did nothing to better their lives. They were easily deterred by the difficulty of the task. They could not bear to make any sacrifice. They would easily give up any revolutionary tendency if the authorities of the time allowed them some temporary satisfaction. This was not only true for the notables of the nation, but for the entirety of the nation's population. Lethargy crippled the nation so that it could not stand in support of its own case. Treachery ran amok. A man could betray his son, his brother, and his father. A woman could abandon her son, husband, and brother. Thus, it was true that their hearts were with Imam Hussain, but their swords were against him. Their hearts were with him because they longed to lead a better life. But when they realized that they had to sacrifice in order to reach this goal, they trembled. They put their swords at the service of whoever would pay them to fight their liberators. When Ubaydillah ibn Ziyad realized that Imam Hussain was determined in his revolution, he gathered the Kufans in their grand mosque. He praised Muawiyah and Yazid. He then promised them wealth and prosperity if they gathered for battle against Imam Hussain. This was the position of the masses, who could not bring themselves to make any sacrifice for their goal.